What if I told you that you've been playing Eve wrong this entire time? This video features the best tips and tricks to help you play the best mother in Brawl Stars, Eve. Alright, so to start off this guide, let's go to talk about Eve's main attack, Egg Shooter. Eve fires 3 eggs in quick succession. The eggs have different sizes, with the smallest egg fired first and the largest egg fired last. Larger eggs have a larger hitbox and deal more damage, but the supercharge rate remains the same. Eve's attack has a moderate reload speed and a very long cooldown. Now the first thing I do want to talk about is that you gotta remember that Eve does have the trait that allows her to walk over water. Use this to your advantage by crossing over water to get to the game mode's objective faster, escape danger, or gain control of the map before the enemies do. This is another reason why a lot of the most meta brawlers are like Eve, where they can walk over water since a lot of the maps in the current map rotation have water. Now with Eve having a pretty long main attack range, you gotta use that to your advantage. Believe it or not, Eve has a 9.33 tile main attack range, which is pretty damn good. So you want to be using this to keep the enemies far away from you and deal damage from a distance. You might as well just keep the enemies at max range since you have that luxury. Now another reason why you want to stay far away from the enemies is because Eve doesn't have a lot of health at all. You really want to avoid close range combat as much as possible because Eve only has 5800 health at max level. This is not a lot of health whatsoever, so you really want to stay away from tanks and assassins. This is mostly because there's no way you'll be able to survive a close range engagement when they will have more health than you. Now you also need to be careful because Eve's unload speed is not the greatest as well. A huge concern about Eve is that her unload speed is not that good. So if you get pinched against tanks and assassins, you will not be able to out damage them, especially since they have more health and be able to unload their attacks much faster than you. They'll probably be able to do more damage anyways, so just in general, stay a good distance away at all times. Now another tip I gotta give you guys about Eve is that you need to be using your ammo very wisely. With Eve's slow unload speed and decent reload speed, you don't want to be wasting your ammo. Also, Eve is a brawler like Lou where you only have 3 main attack projectiles per shot, so it's not easy to consistently hit your shots since you don't shoot a lot of projectiles like Colt for example. Also, with how tiny Eve's small and medium eggs are, that's just going to make it even tougher for you to be consistent with your damage output. Now forget about the small and medium eggs, let's talk about the large egg. Since that large egg is the biggest in attack width and does the most amount of damage out of the 3, then you want to make sure you are at least connecting with that egg every attack. Of course you want to be hitting all 3 shots, but you really want to be focusing on hitting that large egg all the time if you can. Now I would recommend that you're staying at the mid-range since Eve's projectile speeds aren't the greatest too. Eve has the same projectile speed as Surge and Janet just to put things into perspective. And I know I said that you want to stay far away from the enemies, but staying at the mid-range is probably your best bet if you're a good Eve player. This is just so that your projectiles don't have to travel that far and you can increase your chances of hitting more projectiles consistently. But okay, that's gonna be for Eve's main attacks. Let's go to talk about her super now, Baby Boom. Eve throws out a nest egg over obstacles and after 5 seconds it explodes and spawns 3 hatchlings in a triangle formation around it. If the nest egg is destroyed before it explodes, the hatchlings won't spawn. The hatchlings chase the nearest enemies where they poison on contact within a small radius to damage enemies over 4 seconds. The hatchlings also lose 10% of their health every second until they're destroyed. Now as far as where you should be placing your super, I recommend throwing it behind walls or obstacles. Now it takes 5 seconds for the nest egg to explode, right? So you want to make sure that it is being protected and hidden from the enemies. You don't want the enemies to destroy the nest egg while it's waiting to explode. Throw it behind walls and obstacles to make sure that the enemies have no shot at taking it down during those 5 seconds. Now in the case of emergencies, you can even throw it on your super so you can protect your own life. I wouldn't really recommend this however because it's kind of a waste of your super, but you can treat the nest egg as a way to stay alive in case of emergencies. It's kind of like how you would use Nita's Boost Bear or Jessie's Scrappy Turret, but Eve's super has less health and can't attack or do anything until it explodes. Now while you're waiting for the nest egg to explode and waiting for the hatchlings to spawn, you gotta be tanking shots and protecting it. This kind of ties together with the first tip and needing to protect your nest egg as best as you can. If you can protect the nest egg and make sure it can at least explode, then you are giving your hatchlings a chance of reaching the enemies. If you just let the nest egg get killed by the enemies, you essentially wasted your super and got nothing out of it. Now once the hatchlings spawn and they're running towards the enemies, hey, use that to your advantage and tank shots for you. Once those hatchlings spawn, you can use them to tank shots for you now. Push up with the hatchlings and hide behind them if the enemies struggle piercing through them. It's better to sacrifice the lives of your hatchlings if it helps you and your teammates push up the map and pressure the enemies back. Now one of my personal ways of using my super is to cause the hatchlings to scout bushes for me. It's pretty useful to follow and watch where the hatchlings are going if you think that there's enemies camping inside of nearby bushes. The hatchlings will go after the closest enemy and could indicate if there's somebody waiting for you to run by a bush so they can burst you down. Now an amateur mistake I always see is that Eve players are throwing their nest eggs so far away from the enemies. Remember that the hatchlings' health will decay 10% for every second after they are spawned in. So you don't want the nest egg to burst super far away from the enemies, because the hatchlings will have basically no health once they reach the enemy team. The hatchlings won't be as menacing and won't really help you with gaining control up the map. Now, to amplify your super to the next level, I really recommend running Eve's Mythic Gear quadruplets. With Eve's Mythic Gear quadruplets, you can spawn in an extra hatchling every time you use your super. The extra hatchling could make a huge difference, especially if you are facing brawlers that can't pierce through multiple hatchlings at a time. It's just gonna make your super even more frustrating to deal with, so I recommend buying it. But okay, that's gonna be it for Eve's super. Let's go to talk about our gadgets now, but the first one I want to talk about is gonna be Gotta Go. With this gadget, Eve jumps forward in the direction she's facing, allowing her to jump over walls or water, and leaves behind a hatchling. The hatchling has less health than a hatchling from her super, but will deal half the amount of damage as a hatchling from her super. When Eve walks on water, she can also use this gadget. Now, probably one of the most popular ways of using this gadget is to avoid incoming projectiles. You can activate this gadget and jump away from huge incoming damage. It's a great versatile way to stay alive and cause the enemies to waste all their ammo if you can bait it from them. Now, one of my favorite ways of using this gadget is to jump away and retreat so I can stay alive. If you are low in health and the enemies are pressuring you, trying to take you down, you can use this gadget to jump away and escape danger. This can come in handy when you need to get away from tanks and assassins, since you can increase the range between them and make an escape. Now, another great way you can use this gadget is to jump over walls and obstacles. This kind of ties into the previous tip, because you can use this gadget to jump over walls and obstacles to escape dangerous situations. If you can jump over a wall and hide there so you can regain health, that's like a best case scenario. The enemies won't be able to do anything unless they can break the wall or attack over it like a thrower or something. Now, an underrated way you can use this gadget is to just activate it and have the hatchling scout a bush for you. Kinda like with Eve's super, you can spawn a hatchling every time you use this gadget and use that hatchling to scout bushes for you. Especially on very bushy maps, you can use the gadget for this sole purpose even if you don't have to escape anybody. That one hatchling could help your teammates feel more comfortable, since the hatchling will locate wherever the closest enemy is. But okay, that's gonna be for Eve's first gadget. Let's go and talk about her second gadget, Motherly Love. Activating this gadget while a nest egg is active allows Eve's hatchlings from her super to heal her or allies instead of damaging enemies. The hatchlings will end up healing 25% more than their damage to enemies. Now, this time with your super, you want to be throwing it as far away from the enemies as possible. With this gadget, the hatchlings will be going after you and your teammates and not the enemies, right? So you want to be throwing it far away from them so the enemies will have no chance at taking it down. It would be sad if that happens, especially since the hatchlings won't be targeting them in the first place. Now, a time where I'd recommend using this gadget is when your teammates are really struggling trying to get up the map. This gadget can be a useful way to support your team and heal them up passively. Now, yes, it is unfortunate that the hatchlings won't be running towards the enemies to cause pressure, but at least it'll help your team survive. It might make a difference, especially if your team is getting bullied and can't stay alive to gain control of the map. Now, another time where this gadget could probably be better than Gotta Go is when you're facing enemies that can pierce. If you face brawlers like Ams, Janet, or Amber that can pierce through all of your hatchlings, then you might as well use Motherly Love. Your hatchlings would get destroyed if they tried charging towards these types of brawlers, so you might as well just use this gadget and heal up your teammates to get some value out of your super. Now, since the hatchlings will be going for you and your teammates, you might as well just stay near the nest egg once it explodes. If you're in desperate need of health, you might as well stay near your nest egg, so right as it explodes, the hatchlings will be right there to heal you up once they are spawned in. If it spawns in far away from you and your teammates, it could give the enemies a chance to kill the hatchlings, and of course you don't want that to happen. But okay, that's gonna be for Eve's gadgets. Let's go and talk about her star powers, but the first one I want to talk about is Happy Surprise. With this star power, Eve gains a charge bar which takes 5 seconds to charge up, and when charged, if Eve hits an enemy with the largest egg from her attack, it will spawn a hatchling. The hatchling has 30% the health and deals half of the total damage of a hatchling from her super. Now think about this star power kinda like Miko's monkey business star power. With Eve now having a charging bar kinda like Miko, Sprout with overgrowth, and kinda like Mortis, it emphasizes the importance of connecting your shots when your charge bar is fully loaded. If you aren't focusing and really trying to hit the enemies when your charge bar is full, this star power is basically useless to you. Now, if you do decide to run Happy Surprise, I really recommend that you are always keeping a sharp eye on your charge bar. Always knowing what your charge bar is at is important to knowing when you should and shouldn't be attacking. If your charge bar is almost full, you might as well just wait until it's fully charged so you can hopefully spawn in that extra hatchling when you connect. Realistically, it's going to be tough to consistently get value out of this star power, especially in higher ranked matches. Now, I will say that this star power is very useful against single projectile brawlers. The main reason I say this is because that hatchling hatchling that spawns will be a total nightmare for the enemies to deal with. They're gonna have to constantly be on their toes just in case a hatchling spawns when you connect with a large egg. It'll force the enemies to play more passively since they won't want to get hit by Eve. Now another reason why the star power can be pretty good is to waste the enemy's ammo. Even if the hatchling doesn't target single projectile brawlers, it will still cause whoever it goes to waste their ammo. If the hatchling connects onto an enemy, they gotta deal with the poison damage, and that'll delay their auto regeneration. This alone is super annoying to deal with, so they'll probably waste some of their ammo to prevent this from happening to them. But okay, that's gonna be it for Eve's first star power. Let's go and talk about her second star power, Unnatural Order. With this star power equipped, Eve shoots the largest egg first and the smallest egg last. Now since this star power reverses the order of the eggs, it'll allow the large egg to be shot out first and deal more damage right from the start. As I stated at the beginning of the guide, you really want to focus on connecting with that large egg since it does the most damage, and this star power literally allows you to hit it first. Now I love using this star power because it allows me to succeed a lot easier when playing Eve. Not only can you deal damage with the largest egg first, but having that bigger egg being shot out first, it will make it easier for you to be consistent with your damage output. With the widest egg hitting the enemy first, hopefully it'll allow you to hit the enemies with the rest of your eggs after that. Now without a doubt, especially amongst the pro scene, I mean this is the better star power to be using with Eve. The amount of value and consistency with this star power makes it the better one to use with Eve. Happy Surprise allows you to be more annoying, sure, but only really experienced and pro Eve players can thrive with that star power. For more consistency in your damage output and value with your build, I definitely recommend running Unnatural Order for you guys out there. But okay, that's gonna be for Eve's star powers. Let's go and talk about her brand new Hypercharge Generations. When activated, Eve's nest egg will decay by 16% of its maximum health per second until destroyed, but will last up to 6 seconds if it doesn't take any damage. It spawns a hatchling every 0.85 seconds, spawning 6 hatchlings over the decay duration in a triangular formation, in addition to the hatchling spawned upon expiring. The Hypercharge also modifies the super projectile to take the same time to land regardless of the distance thrown. She also gains a 25% speed boost, a 25% damage boost, as well as a 5% shield boost. Now let's be realistic here, this Hypercharge is the only reason why I'm making this Eve guide in the first place. With the Hypercharge spitting out a hatchling every second, it helps Eve and her teammates gain pressure up the map even more. It forces the enemies to waste more ammo, and brawlers that can't pierce through all the hatchlings are going to be in total hell. They're going to be forced to retreat, and that's easy map control for you and your team. Now even more so, like I said with Eve's super, but with her Hypercharge super, I mean you gotta be protecting it with all your life. With the Hypercharge nest egg decaying 16% every second, you really need to be protecting it while it's spitting out all those hatchlings. You want the nest egg to spawn as much hatchlings as possible, so you gotta be shooting it with all your might. And of course you want it to burst out at the very end and spawn those additional hatchlings, which makes it even tougher to deal with. But okay, the build I suggest you guys use with Eve is going to be running the Gotta Go gadget, the Unnatural Order star power. The first gear I'm going to recommend is going to be the reload gear. You gotta be using the reload gear because gaining more ammo back with Eve, I mean that's a must use with her. And then finally, like I said in the video, you gotta be running her mythic gear quadruplets. Spawning in that extra hatchling is just gonna make it a total hell for the enemies to deal with you and your team. Well anyway guys, if you guys enjoyed that video, I highly recommend you just go check out this video right here.